Hello and welcome to another video from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. Today we'll be finding out the key news to emerge from this week's press conferences, and joining me to look over the latest team news is Neale. Neale, welcome.
Hello Joe, how you doing?
Yes, very good, very good. So, but I was eagerly awaiting some of the press conferences today, particularly because I'm on a wild card. And one of the ones I was particularly looking at was Manchester City with a certain Benjamin Mendy. So, what's Pep been saying about his troops and in particular Mendy?
Well, we were hoping for an unambiguous injury update from Pep, which he's not renowned for. But he's given us just that. Mendy is injured. He's out this weekend. He was pressed later in the press conference, Guardiola, about what the problem is. Now, last week, I think we were led to believe it was a knee injury, but it appears to be a problem with his foot now. So whether there was no duration put on his recovery period, whether that's enough for people to ship him out is another question, because there's a lot of value tied up in Mendy at the moment.
I know. I was reading on the BBC were just reporting that it was his fifth metatarsal, which is the long bone that the little toe is attached to, for foot fans out there. And it says no specified time to come back. They seem to be saying it's bruising, nothing broken. But yeah, that's a worry, especially this week when a lot of people will have players that have got quite tough fixtures. They might not want to play them, so perhaps they might not want to play their Wolves defender against the Manchester United team that's still very attacking. For example, they might have a Cardiff defender on the bench, but you don't want to be playing them against Man City. So yeah, this Mendy injury is going to present a lot of difficult decisions, I think, for fantasy managers. What else did Pep have to say? Anything else about any of his other troops?
Not a great deal. Obviously, as usual, part of the press conference is embargoed till later on, and we haven't actually seen the press conference yet because it hasn't dropped. But it was a little update on De Bruyne, his recovery period. Aguero, he was paying tribute to, who signed a contract extension today. But he was, lauding praise on Aguero and his professionalism and how he gives everything for the team, which is positive sign for the weekend if you're an owner of Aguero. And obviously he came back in midweek in the Champions League from that ankle knock that he forced his substitution last weekend. And he looks, I would never use the word certain, but a shoe-in perhaps to start this weekend, particularly given the performance of Gabriel Jesus in midweek, who did very little.
So do we think as well, with Mendy out, that it's likely to be Sané and Delph? That's his usual kind of Mendy's out default option. Do we think that?
Yeah, I think he was possibly preparing for this midweek as well, because Sané was on the bench, and he looked really good actually when he came on. Sané, he was one of the rare shining lights for City in that game against Lyon. I mentioned earlier in the week, last season, as few games as Mendy was available for, there was only one game where those two started together. And Guardiola acknowledged in August, I think it was, when Sané was omitted from the team against Arsenal, that the reason Sané is not playing is because Mendy offers that natural width on the left. So you would assume, given how limited Delph is going forward at left back, that Sané would be, a possibility, a strong possibility to start against who they play? Cardiff this weekend.
Yeah. No. So it almost doesn't matter who they're playing because they'll probably beat them.
Yeah.
So, they're playing Cardiff. So that's a good fixture. So it could be something like Aguero, Sterling, perhaps.
Well, Sterling's a possibility on the left as well, but he's obviously what you'd call an inverted winger. He'd be cutting inside on his right, and he doesn't give that natural.
So he might miss out.
Possibly. Mahrez doesn't really convince yet as an option. On the right flank, but Sterling could move across to the right wing. Bernardo's another possibility playing there. He played there in midweek on the right of a front three, but he did last the full 90 minutes.
We still think that David Silva is too vital in the absence of De Bruyne, or could he get a rest because he played all of midweek game and of course all of most of the previous match as well.
He did, yeah. He was another one to play the full 90 minutes. They haven't really got anyone other than Silva who can create in the way that De Bruyne could when he's fit. I think Gundogan didn't really have a particularly good game, and Fernandinho had a bit of a shocker in midweek as well. So you'd think Silva would play, and the Carabao Cup match next week would be the time for him to have a rest.
Put it this way: there's nothing to indicate he won't.
No.
So we're not. There's no 100% guarantees here, but we're just having a look.
Nothing I've seen yet, anyway. I mean, the embargoed stuff will come on later on. But
so yeah, we're looking at Liverpool next. So Klopp's been talking particularly about some of his forward options. What's he had to say?
Yeah, so Firmino is ready to play this weekend. We sort of assumed that would be the case every year because he came on as a substitute in midweek. But Klopp says he's ready to start. I think the reporter's line of question was, will he start over Sturridge? To which Klopp said, well, they could possibly start together. Not necessarily this weekend, but it's an option in the future. And Sturridge played, I think, 72 minutes on Tuesday night. So you would assume he'd be back among the substitutes. I'd be less confident about Salah and Mane than I am about Firmino, given that they both played the bulk of the game in midweek.
Yeah, so I mean, I know Salah was brought off with about 5 minutes to go, and but Klopp has been saying a few things about Salah this week. What's he been saying?
Yeah, I mean, because of his, I mean, if you call Salah's run a barren run of form, he's sort of been leaping to his defence in the press conference. He's been highlighting the positive nature of his defensive work, how he's still a threat, how he's in good shape, which you would expect a manager to do, to back their asset in a press conference when he's putting a little bit of pressure by the media. There was obviously nothing in that to suggest he either will or won't start, because Klopp, he doesn't give much away in his press conferences in terms of team selection. He's a willing talker, but he will never tell you his lineup. We need an Anfield Express character to clear that sort of thing up. But yeah, I mean, you can't say that Salah was taken off midweek to protect him for the weekend, because it was 85 minutes and Liverpool were defending. They were sort of trying to push the way back to the game, and Salah had quite a poor game. So yeah, Shaqiri, who only came on for 5 minutes in that game, is a possibility to start this weekend.
Because I mean, I was thinking because they've got the Carabao Cup next week. So if, say, for example, one of Salah or Mane was rested for this match, then they wouldn't play again until probably the following Saturday, because it's unlikely they'd be playing in one of these League Cup games so soon in the early stages. I don't know. I'm pinning hopes. It's guesswork, though. Obviously,
it is.
Yeah. But the thing that worries me perhaps more is that Klopp's very keen on Salah's defensive side, which is probably great for him and the team. But that's absolutely hopeless for those of us who want to captain a £13 million player in an attacking role. Yeah, I mean, is that kind of an indication for you that, or do you see that as an indication rather that he's a good team player? Or do you think it's something worrying that Klopp's quite keen for him to kind of drop back a bit more?
That's possible. I mean, the other sort of reading into that quote is that because he's had such a poor run in front of goal, that Klopp's just taken to highlighting something else in his game that is positive that he didn't need to do last season because he was in such red hot form. I mean, actually, Paul, you might know, one of our colleagues, he sent us a screenshot of the heat maps, which are available in the members area, of where Salah's receiving his passes this season compared to Mane. And Salah's are in a much less dangerous position out on the flank, closer to the touchline, whereas Mane's receiving the ball a lot closer to the centre of the pitch, where much of the danger's coming through. So there's obviously downsides to his game this season, as well as the underlying stats that we've highlighted in various videos and articles this season, how he's still top of the goal threat for midfielders with shots and all that kind of stuff. So there's definite legitimate concern to consider another captaincy this week, if not his position in your squad.
I mean, I think if he flops at home against Southampton, I can see a price fall, possibly two, over the coming week as people flock to remove him. because I think at the moment he is struggling to justify that price tag. So this is a big game. This is a big game for him. What about elsewhere? So Arsenal as well. They played midweek as well yesterday in the Europa League. Mkhitaryan has got an injury. For those that are still clinging on to him in the hope that he'll start. Any update there?
Yeah, that could be the death knell for Mkhitaryan as a FPL asset. This caught me by surprise actually, because he completed the full 90 minutes last night. And the only injury concern that came out of the game immediately was Lucas Torreira, who came off with a knock. But Arsenal put up an update this morning saying he's hurt his ankle, and that'll be assessed ahead of the game against Everton on Sunday. Now, we're still awaiting Emery's press conference to give us more detail on that, but he's a definite doubt at this stage. And I mean, he might not have played anyway, given that he lasted the full game. And, you know, people like Özil and Ramsey and Lacazette were all rested completely or brought on as a substitute. So, yeah, if you were needing the extra push to sell Mkhitaryan, that might just have been it.
So it's looking like we're getting a slightly more settled Arsenal side, as in it's looking like it's very likely to be a front three of sorts of Lacazette, Aubameyang and Özil there, with someone like Ramsey or various others, but basically no room for Mkhitaryan. So Ramsey in the middle of midfield rather, and no room for Mkhitaryan. Okay. Looking at some other news now, there was some updates on injuries at Bournemouth, and particularly with Stanislas could be back. I was just wondering if there's any update there about whether it's likely he'll play, and also how that may impact on Fraser, who doesn't necessarily play on the same wing, but could do.
Yeah, they're both pretty versatile. I think that they played across the front line last season. I think Stanislas even played behind the striker once or twice. So yeah, they can both play on either flank. I would doubt that he would start this week. He's definitely in contention. He played, I think, an hour of the under-21s match in midweek against Eastleigh and scored. If he did come back in a contention, which I don't think he would this week, then I wouldn't have thought Fraser would be at risk. Not in the short term.
Well, that's good news then.
Yeah, I think David Brooks on the other side would be the one mostly vulnerable. But yeah, I mean, Fraser's form this season just stands for itself, doesn't it? I mean, you wouldn't be rotating him at this point of the season. Maybe a medium term over Christmas and that, but he's been one of the stars of the season so far.
And Mourinho, he's always good value for his press conferences. He's probably, seeing as Manchester United are doing quite well at the moment, he's probably back to normal now and just giving us some basic team and injury news. What's he been saying?
Yeah, he's a bit happier today. He swaggered into the conference this morning. So yeah, minor team news that won't really affect many fantasy teams. Phil Jones is fit, but he fears a battle to get back in the team ahead of Small and Lindelof. We know Matic and Rashford were already suspended. Herrera and Rojo are out. But Diogo Dalot, who was quite impressive in midweek, I thought, in the Champions League, he won't play tomorrow. Marino's ruled him out. He said he'll play in the Carabao Cup match against Derby next Tuesday. So that's one less fullback to worry about. Unfortunately, he didn't give us any clue as to whether Luke Shaw would be back in the first team for a league game, because he played 90 minutes against Young Boys on Wednesday.
So Valencia's got the other flank sewn up, we presume?
Well, we would presume, but Mourinho has talked about Young's ability to play right back before, and Young is right-footed. So, yeah, Valencia wasn't risked in midweek because of his knee, and I think because of the artificial turf and that. So it's not a given that Valencia starts on the right flank, but the Young Shaw conundrum will roll on for quite a while, I think. So
for those with Mendy and looking to sell him, and Manchester United at home to Wolves, and with some good fixtures coming up as well, a Manchester United defender looks ideal, but it sounds like there's no one that we can 100% say they're definitely going to play. What about Smalling? Would we
Smalling,
say?
Yeah, obviously Smalling's pretty sure. Lindelof looks at risk perhaps from Jones medium term. I think they both played on the same side of defence last season. Okay. So them two might interchange, but Smalling looks pretty comfortable at the moment.
Okay. Now we were hoping to get some news from Chelsea. But they have had a few airport problems. So what's been going on there, and have we had any update, particularly around Pedro, who was injured last night?
Yeah, nothing today from Sarri. As you mentioned, they've had the flight delayed. Pedro himself put out a tweet this morning saying that everything's fine after the incident at the end of the game. And Sarri had sort of downplayed it last night in the post-match interview, saying it wasn't serious. But there's obviously still sufficient doubt to warrant a yellow flag on FPL, and enough doubt if you're an owner to cause you a few sleepless nights before they play on Sunday. I mean, even if he's fit, is he guaranteed to start? Willian was pretty good, I thought, on Thursday, and he's been in the goals and that. So yeah, that one again, much like the Man United fullback situation, the Chelsea right flank is something that isn't going to be resolved anytime soon, other than like a long-term injury to one of the two. So Hazard obviously looks the securest route into that midfield on the left flank.
And so with Morata playing in the Europa League, we think that Giroud will get the nod against West Ham then.
Yeah, I mean, he was fairly impressive last weekend. I think I wrote in the big numbers this week that he's creating on average more chances than any other striker in FPL at the moment. I think he's averaging a chance created every 18 minutes, which bodes well for Hazard, because he's always taking on a new role of goal provider rather than goal getter, Giroud, at the moment.
So he's basically doing the role he did for the French national side, really.
Exactly,
creating that space. He was my spot the differential selection on the Scoutcast this week, because I was hoping he'd play, because I noted that as well. So fingers crossed for those brave souls who are getting Giroud in. So any other news around? It's probably more kind of minor players, but any other players worth noting? Any other injury news?
Yeah, fairly quiet really. Pascal Gross is out this weekend. He's been struggling with I think an ankle knock for a while, and he's definitely out. Sissoko and Ali are back in training for Spurs, but it's not a given that they'll start. Lloris is still out. Pellegrini acknowledged that Arnautovic had a problem behind his knee, but said he was hopeful of him playing again. We've been here before already this season with Arnautovic, and every time he's 50-50 or 75-25, he's always come through. Plus they've got Hernandez, who's sick at the moment, so that's one less option for them up front. And as we know, Lucas Perez doesn't want to play.
Okay, so as well, just thinking of Spurs as well, I'm always coming back to this Mendy question, because he's so highly owned, and it does put down people. Now, do we think that Trippier is going to start, given that he was absent for their midweek game? There was something that I noted in the press conference earlier in the week from Pochettino saying that he was being left out for technical reasons. Is there any indication what he means by technical reasons? Does he mean drop because he's had a fight with me, or rested, or is there any indication what he means by that?
Not really. I mean, it was Trippier and Alderweireld who were left behind when Spurs went to Inter. I haven't been able to find anything more other than that. I mean, he's pretty animated, Pochettino, which is unlike him in his press conference, defending his selection choices in the Champions League. But I mean, you would think that Trippier would come back into contention this weekend. I know he's as you say, he's the one who you'd look towards if Mendy isn't available, which he isn't. But he seems just too much of a risk at the moment. I think on either side, Tottenham's fullbacks are, as they have been for a couple of seasons. Okay. You can't guarantee any of them are going to play on any given week.
Yeah, I mean the reason I ask is because we know deep down that a fullback at Spurs is just a no-go, really, because they're going to get rested, and they're going to get rested unexpectedly, probably for really great games as well. It's just, but I have to ask, because you never know. You never know. One day I'm going to ask that question, and you're going to say, well, this is what I know. It's definitely going to be Trippier playing for the foreseeable future. But one day, we can live and hope. But for now, Neale, thanks so much for chatting, and good luck with the game week.
You too, Joe.